Here we are again. I'm very happy to introduce you to my next guest. The last time when we talked to each other, it was, I think, 2017, when she brought in her movie, The Divine Order, to the Oscars as the Swiss entry, a film about women's right to vote in Switzerland. A comedy, and not so a comedy as well. A great movie. So, but for today we have chosen a different topic to talk. It's about being creative in crisis. I'm very pleased to welcome you from New York, Petra Volpe. Hello.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it a lot. So we're talking about creativity during the pandemic, or what the pandemic did to us in general and what it did to the creative industry. So you, as a filmmaker, you are living part in Berlin, but you spent most of the time in New York, where your family is living as well. What did the lockdown to you, or what was the perspective on the lockdown, just being like a Swiss person or a Swiss citizen in New York at the time, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, where we saw those really shocking pictures?
Yeah, I think the role that I'm Swiss didn't play that wasn't really relevant. It was just like being a citizen of this city of New York that was really hit super hard in the beginning. And I think that informed also very much my, attitude towards the pandemic, to be at the epicenter of this devastating global event, unlike anything, I have ever experienced in my life. So yeah, it was very concrete here. Like, it wasn't an abstract thing. I think for a lot of people in Europe, for my friends in Berlin and in Switzerland, it was something they could hardly grasp because they didn't know anybody, or it wasn't so present in their cities or in the places where they lived. But here, it was really, the city was in the grip of the virus in the very beginning. And that was a very impressive and very shocking and kind of traumatizing experience, I think, for the people who lived here, including myself.
But how was it for the creative industry? I mean, there were many industries where the work simply stopped at the moment, but I think the creative industry especially was one where you could see, okay, there is no filming, there is nothing at all.
Yeah, it depends very much where in the process you were. Like, for myself, I wasn't affected because I was writing at the time. So my life wasn't really different in a way. Like, from a everyday perspective, I spent the day in my office by myself writing. So I wasn't in this concrete way. I wasn't impacted. I was impacted on a more like emotional, like more visceral, more subtle way. But yeah, the filming came to a halt. Movies weren't released. I had lots of friends who had movies ready to go out to the cinema. This couldn't happen. So it came to a complete halt. Also Hollywood, people didn't go to the offices. Productions were halted. People were out of job for a very long time, and actors, Broadway came, nobody worked on Broadway, and there was a lot of, in the newspapers, a lot of, reports about how difficult it was for all the dancers, musicians, actors to survive, because they also don't have any kind of financial security. Mm-hmm. So it was very existential, and a lot of people also changed their jobs in this time. I heard they couldn't afford to be artists anymore.
Mm-hmm. It's incredible. But did you have the feeling that you have more of an independency being a writer at that time?
Yeah, I've definitely felt privileged because, I didn't lose money in a big way. I didn't lose, because I was writing. Anyway, you're not dependent on, on a production company and a big team. You're just by yourself and your computer. But I think it impacted my creativity in ways that I didn't even realize at the time. Mm.
There are many people here of the creative industry as well that appreciated kind of this deceleration and just having this time for muse. I mean, how do you look at this? Did you have time to do like nothing? Or did you appreciate this time, having the chance of doing nothing? Let's put it this way.
I think what I appreciated, but I think it's a two-sided sword. I kind of did appreciate not to have this pressure, not to have to make so many decisions. That was something that completely fell away. I didn't have to decide anything. I was just home, and I had to decide what to eat like everybody else and what to cook in the evening. And I was at the time working on a comedy, and that was very hard. I thought that would be easy to write something uplifting and light. Also, especially after my last project, that was a very heavy project about Switzerland after the Second World War.
Yes, Labyrinth of Peace was running at that time, you said.
Yeah, Labyrinth of Peace premiered during the pandemic, which in a way was, of course, great because everybody was home and sitting in front of the television. So for the show, it was good to premiere during the pandemic. But I felt also numb because I think there was so much pain in the city. There was so much pain around and so much grief and sorrow. And as an artist, you have to be open to all these things that are floating around. I think it's part of our job to be very receptive, but it was so overwhelming that I kind of numbed myself, and that really impacted my creativity. So all the things that I thought I would be doing, like finally writing all the stuff that I hadn't had time to write because I was always under pressure of deadlines and producing things. I didn't do that during the pandemic. I was reading less than ever. I was watching less than ever. I was writing less than ever. And I had a hard time understanding why can't I bring myself to do the things? Now I have time. And I think I underestimated the collective grief, and the collective trauma of this event. And it's just now, that I'm starting to resurface and I'm kind of processing this time and things start to, like, what I've experienced during the pandemic starts to transform itself artistically. And it didn't happen in this very time. In this very time, I was almost frozen. It felt like being numb and frozen. And I was also, beating up myself because I thought, why am I so lazy? But I don't think it's lazy. I think it's giving your body. I think my body was also needing the time to just be in this time and to experience this extreme shift in pace in the whole world.
Did this whole situation also impact the topics that you will probably choose in the nearer future for writing?
Yeah, I mean, now I'm writing something about the speaking dog because, like everybody, I adopted a dog during the pandemic.
Yeah,
and she changed my life, And I think in general, it ignited a big crisis in, like, what am I here for? Like, what are the stories, like, truly that I want to tell? Like, I think the pandemic came together with a crisis in general in me. Like, I had been working really hard for so many years, and I had lost a little bit the joy in writing and creating. I was always just producing and functioning. I'm a very high functioning artist. I keep my deadlines. I have an extreme output. And having to slow down, it just made me realize how much I was just functioning and not having joy anymore. And I'm trying to regain the joy in just creating and the freedom in that, and not just to function. And that's an interesting, process for me.
Yeah, and it's still going on because, I mean, we're in the second year and we're entering the third one. So
yes, and a lot of things are changing in my industry, the way films are watched and consumed. Will cinema survive or not? Will everything go to streamers directly? What does that mean, for my work? And I think it's just also dealing with the fact that things just always change and move forward. You can't stop them, and they transform constantly, including myself. So to kind of stay joyfully in this flow and not to get overwhelmed by it, but also just to give in to it. It's also, I think, an interesting experience for us in the West, or I grew up in a society and culture where I was used that my life is very undisrupted. I can just follow my dream. I do my things, I have my
safe
daily rituals, and to experience this kind of disruption, I think I think we need to take a time and really give that also its place and its meaning in our lives.
Was it like kind of a initial to just get your life in a different kind of order, like prioritize things differently, probably?
No, I mean, my work is always my priority because it's my life. Like there is no distinction for me between, working and not working. As an artist, I feel like I'm always an artist. You can't switch it off at 5:00 and put it back on at 7. It's like a way of being in the world. But I think it kind of took the pressure away. I feel certain pressures fell off, and I can't bring myself to put that back on because I'm just so grateful that most of the people I know survived. And it just showed how fragile we are and how fragile my own life is. And I think I hope I can keep that. And I think it's really interesting that a lot of people are quitting their jobs or trying something new. And I think in the best way, hopefully a little bit of that what is it in English when it's the slowness that came with the pandemic, the reduction, that a little bit of that we can keep and that it informs, the next years. But I'm not sure that's the optimistic take on it.
But what I've heard is that you are happy and feel privileged to do a job that you really love. And we, on our side, really love what you do. So my last question would be, are there any other, besides the speaking dog, and other projects you're working on? Because this speaking dog thing I can really relate to.
Yes, everybody who got a dog can.
Yes.
I'm working on a lot of things. I actually now that things go, like after this last year, I in the last few months, I wrote down a lot of ideas that I've been like kind of hatching for many years. And I took the time to sit down and to not have a deadline and not to write just for myself, to write down all these ideas. And that felt really good. And that kind of reconnected me also to my, core creative self and gave me back some confidence. And then I'm working on some projects, a concrete project that I'm hopefully shooting next year about taking place in an American men prison. And it's about Alzheimer's in prisons and aging in prisons. And it's a project I've been working on for many years. And now it looks like I can finally shoot this next year with a really great American production company. So my heart is very much with this project, and I hope I can pull it off next year. But you need a lot of patience in my business. Patience, persistence, and faith.
Having said this, best wrap up of our talk. Thank you very much, Petra Volpe, for joining us, and cheerio to New York.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.